Guys, line up a little later, ask some questions of this wonderful gentleman. Well, I'm going to delve into his mind a little bit.
I don't know what you're going to find in that mind.
The first thing that comes to mind when having a chance to talk to you is, who is Beau Billingslea? Who are you as a performer? What would you say, what is the one thing that defines you for what you do? Interesting question.
So you start off with the question that stumps me, right? Thanks a lot, man. Well, my concept of myself as a human being, my primary function as an adult has been as a father, and now as a father and a grandfather, and try to pass on the good teachings that my parents used to raise me, such as ask questions and listen. And of course, most of the time now I'm talking about myself, but yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important lessons that I was taught as a child, that I passed on to my children, and we're passing on to my grandchildren, is to ask questions and listen as you go through life. Because I was told that my dad said, if you ask questions and listen, you will never be uncomfortable any place in the world. If you go to a party and you don't know a soul, ask questions and listen. You know, what do you do for a living? How do you know the host? Do you have any kids? You're married? All of those things. And we seem to be in a time of talking, name calling, and all of that stuff that's going on in our society, which is unfortunate. But my concept of myself is as a parent, you're a teacher. I feel that as a parent, you're a teacher. You're trying to teach your child how to succeed in life, how to give and receive love. Because some people have a difficulty doing that. That's one of the other lessons that I learned from my parents, how to give and receive love. But as a performer, as an actor, I like to feel that what I do has a positive effect on people's lives. And I've heard a lot about how Cowboy Bebop has positively affected people's lives, and I feel very fortunate to have been asked to do it. It's one of the roles where I did not audition. I was asked to voice Jet. And it was funny when I my first day in the studio, I didn't know anything about the show. So it's Cowboy Bebop, right? So I thought we were talking about cowboys. So I was thinking, with Mary Elizabeth, the director, we were trying to figure out, okay, what kind of voice to use. So my first thought was, maybe I talk like that, chewing the back end. And she said, actually, no, it's not like that. Cowboys are bounty hunters in the future, and the bebop is your spaceship. I said, oh. And so she said, why don't we do something really radical and use your voice? And I was thinking, my voice? That's boring. I want to do something, as an actor, you want to do something outside of yourself. That's the joy for me, is to do something outside of myself. A lot of my on-camera career was basically being Beau as a doctor, Beau as a lawyer, Beau as a judge, and it's a lot of fun. But in the voice world, I get a chance, because they don't have to see this puny little body, that I can do a lot of different things, and that's one of the joys of being a voice actor. That it doesn't matter what you look like; it's what you sound like. And so I've done voices that you probably heard that you didn't even know it was me. When I was doing voicing Ogremon and Paramon, Sagittariumon, in Digimon, I finished a session where I voiced Ogremon. I don't know if you're familiar with Digimon or Ogremon, but he was talking kind of like that, and he was kind of like the comic relief in Digimon. And so when I finished, Jamie Nimoy, who was Leonard Nimoy's cousin, Jamie said, "Boy, can you do children's Walla?" I said, "Walla? Children's Walla?" Walla is like the background. So I said, "I'll give it a try." So he said, "Well, go on in, let's see what we got." And I wasn't very optimistic, but so this is what I did. Hey, where's everybody? Where did all the kids go? I'm gonna go with all the kids and get the free candy. he said, okay, that'll work. So I did, oh, come on, you can't talk like that. And so that's, obviously that's fun to do. I do stuff like that at home, which drives my wife nuts, But that's what actors do. We drive our family nuts, and we drive our friends nuts. It may not be that entertaining, but it's not boring. So anyway, that was a long answer to a very simple question.
That was actually a very good answer, as a matter of fact, which leads us into your work in anime. Now, I, like a lot of people here, grew up on anime. Cowboy Bebop became one of the main series that we gravitated to. And we were able to somehow relate to each character on the Bebop. Now, with you portraying Jet Black, I have to say, the whitest black man in anime. Or the blackest white man, because like anyone else, when you heard his voice, first thing you thought of is, that's not a white guy. He's got soul in his voice on the shit. And when I found out it was you, I said, that makes sense, okay. Now, when you first heard of the character and you read about his back history, was there anything in there that you related to as far as what he went through?
Definitely. There's a lot, as an actor, what you try to do is find parts of yourself that equate with the character that you're portraying, whether it's on camera or voiceover. And, I'm a father, I have 2 children, a son and a daughter. And Jet has Spike and Faye, and as you know, they go on their capers. I remember the name of the episode. Faye stole all the oolongs, and then she got in trouble, and then she needed help. So it's just, Jet, come and help me, Jet.
It's the parenthood.
Yeah, you stole my oolongs. Right? Now you want my help, huh? Okay. No more bell peppers and beef for you. But yeah, there's a lot of similarity between Beau and Jet. And kind of that, I'm an ex-military, and one of the things about your maleness, your masculinity, is being macho and taking care of people and not showing emotion and things. And I think about that episode where Faye and Spike are gone, and I'm talking to Hein, saying, I don't care if they're gone. I'm glad they're gone. I don't need them. My spaceship. What the heck do I care? I'm glad it's just you and me and Ed. And then I hear a noise. Spike, is that you? Is that Spike? Oh, it's not. No, I don't care. That whole macho facade thing, right?
Yeah.
And as a father, obviously, when you have children, you're the protector, and you don't show vulnerability to them because they rely on you to be the guy who's always going to take care of them and feed them and protect them. And so I think it just comes with being a man. And so we have to accept our sentimentalities, our vulnerabilities as a human being, and coming to grips with that. And it took me a while to do that. And I think part of it, being an actor, was good because I had to dig into those parts of Beau that I was concealing, keeping to myself. And I remember I had an audition for on camera for a show. It was called The District, and it was a cop show. And I was a retired cop. My son was an active duty cop, and he gets killed in an undercover situation. And so in the audition, they said they wanted tears from the actor. And that's very, very rare. That's only happened to me one other time, where they actually requested tears. Usually they say, do what you do. But this one, they wanted tears. And one of the things about acting, especially on camera, is that you have to do stuff over and over again. So that one of the tricks of the trade is when you're shooting the master, which is the main shot before you do your close-ups, you kind of hold back a bit because you don't want to dry yourself up, you know, because what you can do is give great tears in rehearsals and great tears in the master when they're shooting the master, and before you know it, when it comes time to the close-up, you got nothing, you know. The director says, "Oh, where are the tears?" I'm dry. I'm sorry, I got nothing. So, you know, you learn to save it for your close-ups so that the audience can appreciate the experience of seeing what the actor or what the character is going through. Now, that's one of the things about voice acting that you don't necessarily have to, because there's not much crying in anime anyway, right? Not from the guys that I voice, like the Raikage in Naruto, or Ogremon, or Jet. You know, there are no tears. You know, there's no crying in anime, not for me. So that's not something that I needed to deal with. But one of the episodes of Cowboy Bebop, where Jet goes back to Ganymede and has the emotional reunion with his ex-girlfriend, was a real joy to voice that, because I was able to dig into parts of myself that I didn't normally have access to on a normal basis in all the episodes of Cowboy Bebop. You know, we're fighting bad guys and doing all of that stuff, and or you know, eating psilocybin mushrooms. You know, do you guys remember that episode of Mushroom Samba? Yeah. It was, you know, when I saw it, you know, we don't see it until we get in the booth and we see what they show the scene. I'll say, oh, this is what this is, and then the director might give a description. But then I realized, okay, we're doing an anime episode of Cowboy Bebop, and we got black drug dealers. I said, okay. But, you know, that's the way the Japanese did it. That's the way the animation went. So I'm thinking,
that was just the way it was.
Really? but it was a fun episode. Yes, I don't know if you guys remember that Jet was, we all had the mushrooms, right? And so Spike is walking to heaven on the stairwell that never ends. He just goes step by step in his mind, step by step. And Jet is talking to his bonsai tree. You know, have any of you spoken to a tree? It's a very unique experience when you're high on psilocybin mushrooms. And I never thought that I would have an opportunity to voice a character this high. You know, it's just like, this is fun. So I mean, this is really fun. So I don't know if you remember that Jet's talking to his tree, and then he has this outburst. Who am I anyway? and our Spike at one point asked Jet, because we were eating mushrooms. He said, what are we having for dinner? And I was going to give it a shot. So I said, shiitake mushrooms on ice. So the director said, well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll do one without that. I said, okay, we're having shiitake mushrooms on ice. And they let it through. I don't know if you remember. They let it through. So what do you have? Shiitake mushrooms on ice. So I said, and that's when I realized I love my job. I just love doing this. This is so much fun. But I don't remember what the question was, but I've been wandering on and on.
That's fine. When you have conversations like that, it brings different things to mind. With you working on Bebop, of course, you worked on Naruto, fantastic role, and of course, you were married, which I'm a Final Fantasy fan like anyone else, and I saw what you did. Was there an anime? Were you ever a fan of anime before you got into it, or did you become a fan during it?
When I was asked to do anime, I didn't know what it was. I started doing voice work, actually, early on in my career, when I started in New York, I voiced a character. It was a coach in a puppet movie. And I didn't realize that I started my career at that time. I started my career, one of my first roles was as a voice actor, voicing a puppet. And here at the end of close to the end of my days, you know, I'm in the fall of things. I'm doing voice again, right? But I was, in the 80s, I was asked by a friend to dub foreign live-action films. Like there would be a German live-action film, there would be an African character, and they'd say, Beau, can you do an African accent? Would you voice this character? I said, sure, yeah. And I would do this because of my father. And so, you know, I did kind of a Nigerian general accent. But back in those days, people weren't as specific about things now. You can't just say to an African accent, because there's South African, there's Nigerian, there's Ugandan. So you have to do a little research to be specific about, you know, what you're doing. But I did a number of those films. And then he asked me, he said, would you like to do some anime? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. What is it? And then, you know, he introduced me to a friend, Kevin Seymour, and I fell in love with it. It was, you know, it was just fun. You know, it was just fun. It wasn't. I was making my living as an on-camera actor, doing TV commercials and television shows. A lot of those shows in the '80s you might not remember, but A-Team, Fall Guy, T.J. Hooker with William Shatner. I did 2 of those episodes with Bill. And so, in those days, that was back when TV was, there was a lot of action, there was car chases, and so the stunt guys had a lot of work. And then TV turned into talking heads, so, you know, my stunt guy, who made me look terrific. I mean, I was amazing with my stunt double, right? I mean, I was a skydiver, you know, I had fights falling out of second floor windows into a pool, and being chased by a bear, and getting knocked out by tea.
Did they teach you this in the Army? I mean, is this your Army training?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah. I have a quick story about, do you guys aware of a show called A-Team? Yeah. Okay, well, I did 2 episodes of A-Team. The first one was a small thing, but the second one was I was the big main bad guy. And so I was hogtied, you know, and I was knocked out by tea. I was creamed with a fire extinguisher that had whipped cream in it, and slipping around and flopping around on the stairs. But I was also steamed. I don't know if you remember, they used to have these steamers where people would sit in there up to their neck, and they would steam them and make them sweat so they lose weight. Well, the A-Team was steaming the air out of me, steaming the information out of me, right? And so the whole A-Team was around, and they take their turns having a line. Whenever it came time for T's line, the scene would stop. And so the directors, after the third time, the director said, cut. T said, you're killing me here. Because the directors, they have to finish on time, right? He said, you're killing me, what's going on? Don't you know your lines? So T said, I know my lines, I just don't know when to say them. And so I'm sitting there and I said, T, help out a brother, man, I'm dying in here. Because this steamer is working, and I'm dying. Say your damn line, man. You know? But yeah, those are fun days doing that. But the characters I voiced over the years are mostly the big, rough and tumble guys. Yeah, the alpha male roles. And but as I said, I did Children's Walla and Digimon, and I did a game called what was the Angel Wars. And I voiced another character, Swift. He was a big guy who was talking like this, blah, blah, blah. And so we finished that session. He said, okay, they said we want you to voice another character. And I said, okay, who was it, you know? And it was a guy who was like this. He was very slithery. Like, what was that character? A dog's fishbone, though. I can't remember his name, but anyway, he was my role model for that character. Whenever I get a chance to do something other than the big, loud guys, it's just a joy for me, because I'm kind of typecast as a voice actor, doing the big bad roles, like doing orcs in World of Warcraft. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the orcs. They are like creatures. They're not like humans. They're creatures. And so we were doing the Walla for the movie, and we had to do things like, and so if you can imagine doing that for 8 hours. and I was thinking, I used to love my work, I'm not sure anymore. But it was pretty rough work. We had like 10 or 12 guys, and we were voicing like, there was like thousands and thousands of the orcs, so we had to do pass after pass after pass. And there were guys with nosebleeds, and because it's rough on the instrument. And that was one of the reasons we were on strike with the game makers, because they didn't understand what we were going through as voice actors. It's rough on your instrument, and you know, I'm trained to bypass my throat, but even that didn't save me after 8 hours of doing orcs. So that I wasn't necessarily in pain, but I didn't sound like myself. So I was down for like a couple of days until my voice recuperated, so I couldn't audition. And I couldn't do anything that I had auditioned for when I used my regular voice. And so then you have let's say an 8-hour gig on one day where you're doing orcs, then effectively it's like a 3-day gig, because you're down after that. And a lot of the producers of the games didn't understand what the voice actors were going through. And you know, it's not just talking. I narrated a couple of series on the History Channel, and I remember the first thing I told them, I wanted the scripts in advance. And the first series was called Suicide Missions. And I said, I wanted the scripts in advance so I could read through, and so I know what I'm saying. And he said, what do you mean, you're just reading? I said, oh no, you don't get it. You know, this is the guy that hired me, you know, and they didn't get it. You know, just reading. He said, no, I'm not reading. I'm a storyteller. I'm telling a story, and I need to know how it is. You know, and I told him we would have a lot more fun if I read the script once, and that's back when we used paper, so I could make notes on the script and review it and decide how I'm going to do it. Once we got into the studio, it costs money, you know. And I've been in situations where, you know, I'm looking through the glass and they're going like this, you know. And so I told them, I said it would be a lot more fun for everybody if I knew what I was saying before we got into the booth. Like with anime, you know, nobody gives you a script. You know, you get in there and then you look at it, and it's like on the cuff. And there are a lot of times you have to memorize, even though it's voice acting, because you know, we have to synchronize to the flaps, what we call the flaps. And if I'm looking down too much, it's hard for me to synchronize, right? So I have to grab phrases and memorize the phrases and say them when I'm looking at the screen, so that I can match the flaps. And you guys know, you do not tolerate bad dubs. It's like those old Japanese horror movies where they say, where did they go? What happened?
Bad dub will get you in trouble.
Yeah, bad dub will get you in trouble.
Get you in trouble. Big time. Well, I know since you've been here at Blerdcon, I'm pretty sure you've had people come and talk to you and have the opportunity to speak to you about what you've done. Because there are, like I said, you have portrayed characters that a lot of people have helped train themselves. How's your experience been at Blerdcon since you've been here?
Oh, it's been wonderful. As I say, it's great to be at a convention where it's the majority of my people. I mean, it's a very unique experience because this is the only one that I've been to. I don't know if there are similar conventions, but Blerdcon is the first for me, and it's a wonderful, absolutely wonderful experience. And to hear the personal stories that are shared with me about how my work has affected people's lives, it just touches my heart. It just really does, because you know, we're entertainers when we're storytellers, but the bottom line is affecting people's lives if you can. And I've heard so many times how Cowboy Bebop is particularly has had a profound and positive effect on people. The four of us aren't together very often at a convention, but we were in Los Angeles and we had an open mic and we were all sitting talking, and so one woman came up to the mic, and she could barely speak. And she expressed how there was a dark time in her life where she was considering taking her own life. And she could hardly tell this story, and it was so personal and so emotional that, a friend of hers gave her Cowboy Bebop. She said, you have to watch this. And she said she felt that it saved her life. And she could, as I say, she could hardly speak when she was telling the story. And so we were weeping. And we all went down off the stage and we gave her a circle hug. That, she was in the middle and we were all crying. I mean, and there were like 2,000 people in the room, and I mean, the emotion was just, you could cut it. You could see it and feel it and cut it. But that was probably the most extreme story that we've had, that I've heard. But it's a common story that someone say, in college I was having a hard time, and someone introduced me to Cowboy Bebop, and it just helped me get through that terrible time in my life. So, being here and hearing the experiences of the fans has been very, very special.
Outstanding. Okay. Well, we're going to start lining up everyone for the Q&A. Here's the microphone right here. If you have a question you want to talk to, ask Mr. Beau, please by all means come on up. Do not be shy. This is your opportunity to talk to a fantastic man. Okay? Hello. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. All right. Can you talk about your experience voicing in two animes? One being Hunter x Hunter and the second being Re:Zero.
Re:Zero, Old Man Rom. Old Man Rom was fun to do because he's an older guy, but he's a badass. Fighting and acting. As I say, those are the guys that I do. And so that was a lot of fun. And Hunter x Hunter was also a lot of fun. I think, I voiced a character who was like a mob Nostrad. Yeah, Nostrad. Yeah, he was a mobster. He was like an Italian mobster, So when I'm clowning around and boring people with my characters, one of the characters I do is this Italian guy from Philly, So he talks kind of like this. And he says, if you don't do things right, what I'm going to do is call the family and we're going to take care of you, okay? In kind of an Italian Cosa Nostra way. So anyway, I didn't necessarily do Nostra that way, but that was in the back. That was in the back of who he was. And so voicing a mob boss in anime was, in Hunter x Hunter, that was awesome. It was a lot of fun. As I say, and I'm sure you appreciate this, doing something outside of yourself, something different, playing characters. I mean, as an actor, that's what you do. And what do you do when you're a kid? That's what you do. You're playing all of these roles, pretending this and that, something that's not you. And so basically, I'm reliving my childhood.
I've done either playing a very big, nice bear, or even just a flamboyant character who's just so thinks he's larger than life.
You understand the question?
What was it say again?
I guess I just have fun getting to play like some character that's just very flamboyant.
Oh, is it fun?
Yeah,
is that what you said?
I mean, that'd be fun if I get to play that.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy doing the role?
Oh yeah. And there are a lot of, very rarely in life do you get a chance to be loud and just out there. I mean, our culture is kind of a loud culture, but you don't hear there's something fun about that. I don't know what it is. I was trained vocally trained by a coach from the Metropolitan Opera, Dr. Dean Bearhines, and one of the things he does, he's done now, but he trained you, he built your voice, built a big voice, right? He said, small, beautiful voices are a dime a dozen. Big, beautiful voices are rare. And so I would have a vocal lesson once a week, and we'd do exercises. One of them would be, go again, go again, go again, go again, go. And as loud as you can do it, as loud as you can do it. And I don't know about your background, but a lot of times kids are quiet, shh, quiet, quiet, they're quiet. And so now this is a chance for me as an adult to just scream. And but the loud, flamboyant guys are obviously a lot of fun to do. Yeah. Thank you for your questions. Yes.
How you doing?
You been to the gym? You been to the gym lately? You need to go to the gym, man.
Look at it stacked. Look at this. He's got arms on arms.
Thank you. So forgive me if I missed the Vernon CPT, came about 10 minutes late. But what I wanted to ask is, how has the voice acting industry changed over the course of the past couple of decades? And you have a background in acting, and also training by an opera singer. For someone who, like me, this is basically me, for someone who feels like they're interested into it but don't know how exactly to get into that industry or really get their voice out there, what would be your bit of advice? I'm asking a whole bunch of questions at once.
Okay, first about your...
I have to say, that voice is huge.
Yeah, exactly.
That voice is huge.
Yeah, beautiful voice. Well, take classes. Like Steve Bloom, you know Steve, right? Steve has a Bloombox Studios on Facebook, and he has classes, he has exercises and copy for you to read, and he will review your work. And once you get comfortable, do a demo, like Mark Grau, Greu, he does demos. He will put together a demo for you. And there are a lot of audition opportunities that are online, because a lot of this is non-union stuff. So you don't have to be a member of the union. So you can audition online. So that would be my advice. Study, get good at what you do a demo, and then put your voice out there. And you have a big, beautiful voice, but be good for narrations, like for the History Channel, and for monsters and bad guys and anime and video games. But also cultivate your upper register, because the more flexible you are, the more voices, characters you can voice, the more gigs you'll book, right? So that it's nice for you to come in with that big, beautiful bass voice, but then for you to do, kiss water so you can get free candy. So, and as to your first question is, how has the business changed? When I first started, we were dubbing the live action films where I do the African character. Well, they had no beeps. We have beeps now that we work with. For those of you who don't know, there are 3 beeps. We speak where the 4th beep would be. And the general rule is you breathe on the 2nd beep. So it's like beep, 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 speak. So in my mind it's beep, breathe, beep, speak. And because you can't wait to breathe when you're supposed to be speaking, so you have to take that breath when you're going to be ready to speak. And they have Pro Tools, which they can slide it, compress it, so that if you're not right on with your dub with every flap, they can move it a little bit, right? When I started, we didn't have beeps, and we had time codes, and sometimes we didn't have time codes. So this was a live action, so dubbing like a German film. So they would play the scene for us, and we'd watch the scene, maybe play it again, and then we would do what they call chase the scene. You just follow it. Now, the script is here, but the scene is up there. So once again, we're talking about memorizing like that, big chunks, memorizing it, looking down, grab it, and follow. And then, we would work through the scene, but it was tedious work, and you had, as I say, there's nothing, you guys know, there's nothing worse than a bad dub. Whether it's anime or whether it's live action, like those old Japanese films where they're not dubbed well. So that's how I started. And it was nerve-wracking. Because when somebody hires you, asks you, they ask you to do something, you want to deliver. You know what I mean? If you have any pride in yourself, you want to deliver. You don't want to be that guy. Oh, Beau has a great voice, but his work's not so good. You know? So it's a lot more than just a voice. Obviously, when I talk about what I do, it's like I'm voicing a character. You know, and I'm not doing a voice. I'm performing a character. And I don't know if you do accents, but if you can develop accents, and once again, because we're in the information age, you can go online and get accents. One of the accents that I do, that I did in a movie, I did a Cajun dog. And when I shot this movie called The Blob, I don't know if you guys are aware of The Blob. Well, we shot it in Louisiana, and we were in a Western store, and this guy had a discount for everybody from Warner Brothers. So I think it was a TriStar. So we were in there. So this guy asked me, he said, he was the owner of the store. He said, "Y'all ever had gator?" And I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Y'all ever had gator? You know, alligator." Oh, have I ever had alligator? No. He said, "Oh, it's good eating, you know. A friend of mine had a barbecue the other day. He had a whole side of gator. He put onion on it, pepper, cayenne pepper. Put it, I don't know." And that was in '86, I think it was. And that's the year. So I remember that story, and that's how, if I have an occasion to do a Cajun accent, that is my reference point when I start. So that's just a tip on if you're going to do accents. If you have an occasion to experience someone who's that person, listen to them and hear their story and repeat it to yourself periodically, in addition to learning the rules of an accent. You know, there are the rules, and then there's just, you know, listening, having your ear, listening to somebody, and to do it. But yeah, the business has changed a lot since I started. So now it's, compared to when I started, it's a piece of cake, so to speak. So I hope I answered your questions.
You did. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Anybody else? Come on up. How you
Well,
doing?
hello there. I know you.
Hi, yes.
Hi.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. So I actually had a question. I don't know how to phrase this, but so as a black man in a very white society, you're probably used to people telling you, you know, talk and be quiet. Basically, anyone who's not a straight white guy has had that experience. To shut up and be silent. But as a voice actor, you speak for a living. So I guess what I'm asking is, what is that like? To like live in a society where people don't want you to talk, but you talk for a living?
That is probably the most unique question I've ever had in my lifetime.
Okay, I feel like it's the
I
only
agree.
place I can actually ask it.
That is a really good question.
It's a great question. You know, my background, I grew up as an athlete. I thought of myself as an athlete. I went to college on a football scholarship. I had letters from the NFL. So grunting and groaning was part of my life, but I had that outlet for it. So that it's always easy for me to be quiet spoken and not. I grew up in Connecticut, where I was one of the few people of color there, and so I was noticed. So it wasn't. Sometimes I wanted to disappear because I didn't want to be that. We used to be. They called us colored kids. I wasn't the colored kid, so I wanted to disappear into myself. My parents felt the situation a lot stronger than I did. So it was explained to me that I was one of the few black people in our town. So I had to set the example. I had to be twice as good as everybody else. My behavior had to be perfect. And so, but I was a kid, so I did the things that everybody else did. I had a collie dog, looked like Lassie, and we were there were fruit trees and things that we do. You know, we'd walk home from school and grab an apple from a tree, you know, which was somebody's tree on the yard, but nobody would say anything. But there was this one woman who, she didn't play the game. She called the police, You know, we didn't think of it as stealing. It was that we were taking an apple, taking an apple. And she called the police, and one of the kids who was with us, who we took her apples, was a cop. And so we came out of the woods, because she was on the other side of the woods. We came out of the woods, and there was a black and white there, Frankie Rizicki's father, and he said, okay, get in. We said, I'm Mr. Rizicki. He said, get in. I said, get in. Get in the car. I said, what? So he put us all in the car, and he took us all home. And that was a scandal right there, getting dropped off at home by black and white, right? By a cop car. And when I got inside, my father knew the story. So he said, sit down there. My father, I had the most wonderful parents. They didn't hit us, and they did not yell at us. And I realized being a parent how hard that was. But they wanted to break that whole thing, coming from the South and the Bible, all that business about spare the rod, spoil the child. So my parents stopped that. So that I knew I was in big trouble when my father talked really quietly. So he said, okay, sit down. Oh boy, I'm in for it now. And he said, what's that over there? He pointed to a bowl of fruit on the table. I said, it's a bowl of fruit. And he said, so the fruit I buy with my hard-earned money is not good enough for you. You gotta steal somebody's fruit. So you're the only colored kid around, and you're a thief. And I'm thinking, oh man. I didn't realize what I had done was, I felt like I had killed somebody. And I'm thinking, it was just an apple. It was just an apple. But that was the lesson I had. I was representing our race in my life. And so I was always taught to be quiet and to be polite. And so I think that's one of the things about football. Growling and screaming playing football was a nice outlet for me. And then, and then when I became an actor, I started on stage, and so I was able to let it out, so to speak, and in a good way, not offending anybody, being too loud, and having you children too loud, get out of this house, you're too loud. And I developed my voice with my training, and come to find out that being loud was not necessarily a bad thing. Like on stage, and years ago when we were on stage, we didn't have microphones all over like they have now. When you go to a musical, you got a microphone right here. It was like hit the back of the house, but like with a stage whisper. You gotta whisper. There are times when you're having a conversation on stage, and you have to get the impression of whispering, but you can't whisper because the people in the back won't hear you. So you have to be able to develop your voice so you can do a very loud stage whisper. But yeah, taking the vocal training, and I had to vocalize every day, and as loud as I could. That's how you build a big voice, is singing and doing the vocal exercises as loud as possible. Because early on, when I first moved to Hollywood, I was living in an apartment, so I had to deal with my neighbors. Named Beau. So there were certain hours that I had to vocalize because I didn't want to disturb them. So I would vocalize primarily in the middle of the day when most people were at work, so they weren't at home. But I did get occasional calls and, Beau, please stop. I said, okay. You don't find my screaming beautiful? I said, what's wrong with you, right? But yeah, that's kind of been my experience. And we were just in France, and I have a cousin who has a big voice, and he's slightly hard of hearing. I think he's from the military, and so he doesn't really realize how loud his voice can be. And so we kind of took on the character of being the loud Americans. And with the French, the guide, we were taking a train from Paris to Avignon, and the tour guide said, the French people like their privacy, so if you could use like a quiet voice when you're on a train, it would really be nice. But yeah, that's been my experience. I hope I answered this pretty tricky question. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you much.
Anybody else?
I think we can take one more.
Okay.
How you doing?
All right, how about you?
Good. question was, because I'm a huge Star Trek fan,
Okay.
and you might be one of the very few on-screen black actors. So I wanted to know, how'd you get involved with Star Trek Into Darkness, and what was the experience like?
Very interesting question. When I auditioned for Star Trek Into Darkness, I didn't know what I was auditioning for, because it was secret. Everything is secret now in Hollywood, right? A lot of times you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement before you audition. But anyway, so there was a monologue that I had to deliver, and it was not at J.J. Abrams' production company. If it was at his production company, I probably would have figured it out. And Bad Robot is the name of his company. So it was at the casting director's office, and it was a monologue, and I did it. And I didn't know what it was. My wife she looked in there. I thought I was talking about my ship, and I was thinking it was a ship on the sea. Right? And she says, no, I think it's a spaceship. And I'm saying, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Whatever it is, it's probably one of these things that goes right to video. So about 3 weeks later, my manager called me. She said, Beau, you know that little thing you auditioned for? You booked it. I said, oh, great. What is it? So is it straight to video? She said, no, it's a little movie called Star Trek Into Darkness. And I said, well, would you repeat that? And she said, yep, you're joining the Star Trek family. And needless to say, I was very happy, and the experience was wonderful. With J.J. Abrams, he's a director who has a very clear vision of what he wants, and he has the language skills to communicate. Because a lot of people don't understand that a director can have a vision, but he has to be able to use the language to communicate to his actors. And I've been with directors who has been very frustrating because I'm really trying to figure out. I want to give you what you need, but I'm not really sure what you need. I'm not really sure what it is, right? So yeah, and I worked 3 weeks on the film, and most of my stuff was cut. And I remember there was one scene after the rocket hits the conference room. I had a stunt double. He did all of the bad work and the rough work, and then I came in to be the guy, right? That's what we do. And JJ looked down at me and said, "Well, this will be in the movie," and of course it wasn't. And I had interchanges with Chris Pine, with Jack Quinto. Zachary Quinto, he's supposed to be my first officer, and so that's why he was sitting next to me. And Peter Weller, RoboCop fame, if you don't know the movie. And he had all of this dialogue, and most of it was cut. And I had been in the business long enough to know that happens. When I first started my career, I would have like this little role that would be cut, and I would tell my parents, I'm in this show. You watch it. They tell me, we go to church, we tell everybody to be in church, and there'd be an article in the paper in my hometown, and then I'm not in the show. And my father said, you know what, the next time you tell us you're in a television show, you better be in it.